Hello and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile, and this is a show where I get to have conversations with people in sports and business and everything that happens in between. And today I have my good friend Deven Hurt. He's the co-founder and CEO of PredictionStrike, formerly working with the NBA and Nike. And oh, by the way, graduated from Harvard. Deven, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. Hi, everyone. Michael, thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure's all mine, brother. I get to ask you a bunch of questions. So if the name Prediction Strike sounds a little familiar to some of our listeners out there, I got to interview Brad Chabra. If I'm saying his last name right, I'm sure I butchered it a couple times during the interview, but I got to interview him a few months back. He is the other co-founder to Prediction Strike. They're doing a lot of cool stuff, and spoke with Brad, and he said, well, during this pandemic, we really can't do too much because sports aren't going on. So this athlete stock market thing doesn't quite work as well if nothing's happening. But I'm very grateful. Devin's on. Obviously, we have the NBA back. As we were just saying, the NFL is coming back in only, I think, 6 more weeks, something like that, which is just crazy. But I'm so excited. So we'll get into that for a little bit. But I do want to talk to Devin about his career path and what he's done, because I think it's very important for people to understand just because you're not an athlete, just because you're not in ticket sales doesn't mean you can't work in sports in some capacity. So very excited about that. But Devin, the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Wow. Loaded question, but I mean, it's just fun, right? At the end of the day, like I grew up playing sports, as I think a lot to most kids did, and it's a way to. It became a way to have fun with my friends, have fun with my family. It's really stayed that. We play casual games all the time, and we watch pro sports. I mean, all the time. If you look at the NBA schedule right now, it's kind of World Cup style. We have I'm in Oregon right now, so we have games starting at 10:30 in the morning. All of a sudden, it is wild. It's fun, and I know it's cliche, but sports really do bring people together.
It's true, man. I mean, it's funny, the competition brings people together. It's kind of funny, that division also brings us together, which I think is really important. And yeah, man, I've been enjoying it. I mean, as we're recording here on August, 3rd, there's currently a hockey game on right now. An NBA game's about to start in 30 minutes. So we'll speed this thing up so you can throw your TV on in the background. But no, man, I'm excited. And yeah, I'm just so grateful to have sports back. I'm a huge MLB fan. So, I'll take the 3 weeks that it looks like we're probably going to get of it, because I don't know how much longer it's going to last. But it has been absolutely fantastic. So the one thing I did just want to touch upon again, graduated from Harvard. I think I've spoken to a couple people that have graduated from Harvard. Obviously, I'm literally 20 minutes from Princeton's campus. Been there, absolutely gorgeous, love it. Looks like Hogwarts, the whole nine. But what is Harvard like? Like I've never been able to conceptualize like what going to school at one of these, 5, 6, 7 major Ivy League schools that is known around the world. I mean, does that kind of like get you going when someone reminds you, like, oh yeah, I graduated from Harvard? Not that bad. Not that bad.
um, I mean, first of all, right, I do have to look at it as it's a blessing and an incredible opportunity to go to Harvard to graduate. What is it like? I mean, it's hard to compare it to other colleges because I
Hmm.
don't really know,
That's true.
but there's definitely, of course, a large focus on academics, but at the same time, you do get all those normal college elements that people think about. Like we had the clubs, there were sports, people who watch sports. You had all the sports teams. There were parties. It's very much like there are just normal college elements at the
Hmm.
same time. And one thing that I think myself and most Harvard graduates highlight is the people. People are incredible. Everyone is so accomplished at either one thing or multiple things, and you can learn so much from just about everyone you meet. And I think that is the most incredible part about it. You get all of a sudden just placed around all these people where whether you're doing problem sets at 4 in the morning or just in the dining hall, either your conversation can either be just the most casual thing, like, oh, is the MLB actually going to play this year? All the way to, I don't know, you're learning something about quantum physics. And I think that's the best part about it.
That is pretty cool, man. I mean, being around other highly motivated people, I think is just an acceleration to that motivation, right? And then the competition then comes involved. I know you owned a business during college too for a little bit, which is pretty
Hmm.
interesting. And I'm sure you're not the only person at Harvard that was running a business while at school there. So
Yeah.
again, being around other people like that really starts to get that snowball to roll down the hill a little quicker. And talking to people and sharing those ideas, again, as you said, it's a pretty interesting place to be. So after Harvard, you graduated there. I'm sure you did great. Don't really think, honestly, if you just graduate from Harvard, I think you get a job. I don't think the GPA part matters, but that's another conversation. But your first job out of school, it looks like you were cybersecurity research at the NBA. What
Mhm.
the hell is cybersecurity research at the NBA? What are you
Yes.
doing there, dude? That sounds nuts.
So it actually started towards the very end of college,
Okay.
and it ran kind of towards the. I took some months off in the summer before starting real work, and that's how it started. So basically, the MBA formed a partnership with Harvard, specifically the Harvard Kennedy School, which is our graduate school of government. So the MBA came and said, "Look, we need some people to research cybersecurity. You have smart people here, people who also probably like sports. Is there anyone?" A professor, Professor Solomar, was kind enough to recommend me. I got in touch with the MBA. We eventually just worked it out, and I started researching for them. So, what does that actually mean? Um, the NBA really wants to research their cybersecurity policies, specifically just around the stadiums and the stadium security. Uh, as you can imagine, there have been just a ton of cyber attacks, just at kind of all levels of business operations. So the focus of this was really what happens if there were to be some sort of cyber attack or some sort of cybersecurity incident around the physical space where you have the fans, the athletes. What does that look like? What are the ramifications of it? And how can we stop it?
That's really, I mean, and so in how do you go about researching something that I'm assuming it's happened somewhere around the world at some point in time, but the fact that, technology is always getting better and people are always having to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 7 steps ahead. What exactly do you research? I feel like that's not a quick Google search, right?
It
Like,
is.
I don't think it's not something you could just be like, so what do I do in this situation? Like, what the heck does that even look like?
It's not. A lot of it is finding trends because you're never going to get everything right. Like
Exactly.
especially if you look at a stadium. Uh, someone builds a stadium this year. The next team builds a stadium next year. They're going to have different things. Some of those features are going to overlap, et cetera, et cetera. So you start to look at trends and you start to look at best practices. So just what are some general things that you should be thinking about? Who are some people you can also go to and ask as you add these features, and make sure that they know who to go to and ask. And sometimes that might be the team's in-house cybersecurity. That might be, depending on the team ownership structure, it might be the arena itself. It might be an outside cybersecurity agency, just depending on who it is. But making sure that they know the things they should be thinking about before they just throw a bunch of technology in a big building where
Mhm.
there's, I don't know, 10,000 people and multi-billion dollars worth of operations.
Yeah, man. I mean, that sounds intense and it sounds really interesting. I'm sure you know some stuff that you're not allowed to tell us. And I keep it that
Of
way,
course.
but it makes this conversation a little more interesting because now I'm going to try and pull some of it out of you maybe a little bit later on. But I
All
just think
right.
it's really, I think I'm sure you're locked up. I'm sure you're good. I'm not too worried, but I'm sure it's just so much, just does it, that one thing about kind of being that deep, does that ever worry you more? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
you know way more than everybody else, so you probably see a lot of the negatives because that's what you're trying to prevent against. And obviously, if anything ever came out, it's quickly gone to social media or just the media in general. So is that, I mean, this wasn't supposed to be a part of the conversation, but like, is that something that ever kind of, working in cybersecurity so long makes you kind of weary about some of this technology that we have?
Oh, most definitely. I think people who do work in some sort of security function, whether it's cybersecurity, building security, national security, they will tell you they're a little bit more paranoid about things. And it does. I see a lot of the bad things that happen. I see a lot of the bad things that could have happened, but for kind of whatever, whatever. And so I've tried to be very cautious in my life with this technology that's used. But it's definitely concerning when you look around and see just all of the technologies that are adopted and the speed at which they are.
Mhm.
Without a lot of times we just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, sometimes it might be your data, which is of course bad and very private, but sometimes it might be your life, just depending on what it is. Like remember those self-driving, or not the self-driving cars, they were able to hack into the manual driven cars and
Mhm.
just turn the brakes on and things like that. It's like you don't really know what's going to happen until someone starts researching it and figures it out. And it's like, oh well, glad that was never exploited before, but that was that was not good. So it's definitely concerning.
And thank you for doing that, Devin. I'm gonna roll with ignorance is bliss, and if anything really comes up, just let me know, man. I'm gonna
Definitely.
keep it in the back of my mind, but try not to pay attention. So I just gotta ask. We're being a little bit, it's definitely conversation's not quite going the exact way, but TikTok.
Mhm.
What do we got? Is it actually leaving? Is it actually that bad? Like, talk to me a little bit. I don't know. I'm confused.
Sure. Uh, First part of that, is it actually leaving? I don't think so.
Doesn't look
Last
like it.
last I heard that as of this morning, actually, Microsoft is in very serious talks to buy it. That of course has to be approved kind of by the U.S. government and then the TikTok actual the owners, ByteDance, and go through that whole process. So, but it seems like they're making headway there. Is it actually that bad? It definitely has the potential to be.
Ah,
And it's just when you think about something, you're loading something onto everyone at this point. TikTok, I don't know how many millions of people, all these people's phones. You don't quite know what it does, and there have been potentially exploited vulnerabilities with TikTok and information that they have reported to have been collecting that they shouldn't have, that was supposedly patched and things like that. Is that exclusive to TikTok? No.
I was gonna
Uh,
say. Is this different than any of the other social medias? We know
Not really.
Google knows my credit card. I type in 3 numbers and they're like, "All right, here you go. You can buy anything on planet Earth." It's like, I mean, at this point, I feel like
Exactly.
they all have all of it anyway. So what the hell's the
Pretty
difference?
much. I think the difference with TikTok uh, is very political. It's who owns the data, and obviously this is a foreign a company with large size to a foreign government. They're in foreign soil. Their developers are in foreign soil. So American ability to kind of police that is very limited. So that became a very political issue, but kind of inherently to it, is it really different than, I don't know, if all these large companies that collect all of our data, or really if just kind of some kid in his basement made a super hot app that gave it that, I don't know what the app does, but it's fun and at the same time has permissions to clean your passwords off your device.
Mhm.
Now that kid has all your information as well. So is it inherently different now? But politically it is, of course, just a concern because it is another government.
That makes sense. I was gonna say, like, well, how different is this from the rest of the social media apps that steal all my information anyway?
Right.
Whatever, man. Like, I don't have TikTok and I don't plan to, but I have all the other ones. So if they all have it, what the hell's the difference in my mind? So sorry for that little change there. I guess going back to you and working at the NBA, how integrated were you into the NBA? Like, were you going to these stadiums? Were you going to the games to kind of see everything firsthand? And I guess like how was your team working with the NBA? Or were you guys kind of off to the side a little bit more and just kind of spoke when needed to speak to kind of thing?
So we were pretty well. We went to so I was in Cambridge. I went to Harvard at the time. We went to
No big
TD
deal, by the
Garden.
way. No big deal. No big deal.
We went to TD Garden. I'm from Long Island, so I was home at one point. So we went to Barclays. So we went to some of the, which are obviously two large, very large sports arenas at this point. So we went there. The NBA staff was amazing. And I'd like to shout all the entire security staff out. I won't start doing names because that's how you miss people and get in trouble. But they were all incredible. They really did make me feel like I was part of the team, and like they spent a lot of time working with me, connecting me with other people, setting up phone calls for me with other people. Just so much time, and of course they have a real job to do. It's NBA. They're coming up on playoffs. They have a lot of stuff that they're worried about, and it was just an incredible experience.
That's amazing, dude. And shout out to all those people. I'm sure exactly you're right. If you start naming people, you're going to forget someone. So let's not
Yep.
even bother there. So after working at the NBA for a few months, you then go and start doing cybersecurity at Nike. So to get that job, were there any connections from the NBA that led you to Nike, or was this completely separate? And they just said, "Oh, you worked with the NBA. It's probably a pretty good thing to have on your resume, I'm sure at the time."
This was very separate. So I accepted the job for Nike sometime around, I want to say February-ish that year, late winter, spring
Mhm.
timeframe. I accepted the job with the NBA thereafter. It was meant to be kind of
Oh,
just a
okay.
contract job, uh, do some work with the NBA. It was like I'm graduating college, and this is kind of the best possible way to go out, right? So I knew I was going to Nike already, and then I my start date for Nike wasn't until later in the summer. So things actually just kind of turned out kind of nicely timing wise. And I went to Nike, and exactly, I was able to bring that experience with the NBA, and it's not only is it great learnings, but it's something cool to talk about. It's Nike. People love sports. People love the NBA. People love basketball.
It is 100% true, man. I mean, Nike's globally known as one of the biggest, best companies in the world. I mean, they do so much in terms of products and athletes and sports, and obviously everyone's going to know them. And some people obviously have their allegiances, but you work there, you're even still repping it now that you're
Yep.
not working there too much any longer. But I guess what at the NBA, it looked like it was more of a physical, like, hey, what can happen on premise? At Nike, I mean, they don't really own any stadiums or anything. So what
Right.
exactly does cybersecurity look from the Nike end compared to what you're doing over at the NBA?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, the NBA was largely physical. Kind of, it was meant to be the bridge between what happens when a cyber attack has physical ramifications.
Okay.
Whereas Nike, what I was doing is very much digital, about just data security, data protection, networking, things like that. So my actual job title was cloud security and automation engineer. So I was coding a lot. That's code for I was coding. Doing a lot of coding, things around cloud infrastructure, around general data protection, cybersecurity, and a lot of just one-off things because we were part of the automation team. If networking needs something or identity access management needs something, we hop in on that too. So a little bit all over the place, but kind of as you're alluding, it was very much about securing Nike's data, Nike's networks. I personally didn't work on .com, but just kind of like the website. Think about if Nike.com goes down, that's of course a disaster. So things
Mhm.
like that.
That's a couple $1 million disaster, if not more.
Yes.
I could only imagine. And yes, with all the proprietary information, with all the information with athletes and sites and everything that's involved with teams and leagues, I could see needing a pretty good team of cybersecurity because I'm sure people are trying to get in. And I guess how do you know if people like do you like again, I feel like it's not just like a notification that comes on your phone. It's like, hey, someone's trying to get into Nike right
Mhm.
now. Like how do you prevent something if you don't know exactly where it's gonna come from or how it's gonna happen? Does that make sense?
No, it definitely makes sense. So in a perfect world, that would be the goal.
Yeah,
That your
right?
phone lights up. It's like,
Hey,
look,
watch
someone's
out.
trying to. Yes, exactly. Right. um, so it's a lot of trying to set that up, trying to say, okay, we know someone could try to attack our system in XYZ way. So we're going to one, try and stop it, and two, set some sort of logging around what they tried to do. And three, if someone gets into this part of the system from some sort of unrecognized device or computer or whatever it is, there should be a notification at the least. Ideally, kind of isolate that device and shut that down. But that is the inherent challenge of cybersecurity is that you're always trying to be one step ahead of people when you don't really know where the road is. And in many ways, they only have to be right once, right? If a company
Mhm.
gets hacked one good time, then they can kind of get the keys to the kingdom. And depending on what you have kind of stored where, that could be billions of dollars worth of information. Whereas when you work in security, you have to try and be right all the time. Uh, so a lot of that comes down to just researching things that can happen, working with partners. Um, there's tons of cybersecurity companies out there right now. When you start going to the cloud, the actual cloud providers spend a lot of time helping companies with their cybersecurity, and they put a lot of money into it. So those types of things are very helpful, but it really is just a constant cat and mouse game.
Yeah, man, I can only imagine. I mean, you must have just been stressed out to shit like at all times, right? Like you're essentially trying to figure out, like you're trying to hack your own system to see where it could come, someone else could come through, and now you're trying to block that and patch that hole up, while just continuously looking for other holes. I mean, like, what is your stress level at work? I mean, again, working for a company like Nike or the NBA, where it's even the physical opportunities or the physical presence. I mean, were you just like pulling your hair out on a daily basis at that point?
It's weird. You look at Nike and specifically cybersecurity. It's like this could all go so bad if just if we have
Yeah.
one bad day, it's terrible, right? Our goal is to kind of stay out of the news, stay hidden, make sure no one's looking for us. Uh, that is stressful in of itself, but somehow they create such a fun work environment even within cybersecurity. I think it's largely due to their hiring. I will shout out HR; they do a great job of hiring just cool, fun people. So that even though the job itself is very intense, very demanding, people are fun. They keep a good work life balance. They're down to just have a good time. People are smiling at work, things like that. That really just takes a lot of that added pressure off. I think if I came to work every day and people were like, all right, so we need to stop XYZ, or we're gonna lose $1 billion this quarter. It'd be like, oh, okay, like,
Yeah.
so I'll get right on that. Like,
Uh-huh.
sorry, but no, people are like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how's your day? People are just good people.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, working with good people definitely helps. Work environments are a real thing, and you see it all the time. So I think that part's pretty important. And the one thing that I think is really cool about your story, again, is on this show specifically, I like to talk to people in the world of sports business, and I've never had the opportunity to talk to somebody in cybersecurity before, just in general. Now we can throw in the fact that you're working cybersecurity at Nike. So I always want people to remember just you can do anything in the world of sports. Like it does not matter. As you said, you grew up loving them, you've been playing them, it's competition, it's fun, it brings you and your family together. And oh, by the way, you can go work for Nike. You can work
Hmm.
for the NBA and do whatever you're really good at, which sounds like it's cybersecurity and entrepreneurship, which we'll get to in a minute. So, I mean, what was that always kind of the goal was to work in sports in some capacity, or did it just thankfully happen like that and you were able to say, wow, I love this aspect, like I can still meet these athletes and go to these games and see these teams? Like how much cooler does it make cybersecurity that you're doing it for a sports company rather than just like a pharmaceutical company or
Right.
some consumer packaged good company that'll send you some like protein bars every once in a while?
Yep. I definitely fell into it. A lot of the internships I did in college were more pure technology, kind of the big tech companies, and which is great. A great experience. You learn a ton, surrounded by brilliant people. Will not knock that in the least. It was just for me. I wanted to get to something that's more kind of business focused, more consumer focused as well. So that's something I was just as I was leaving college, I was interested more in just how do you build a business that is not just a pure technology company. You look at
Mhm.
Google, right? All their businesses and ads, which is cool, but just not something that interested me at the time. So the Nike opportunity came up, and it was like, this is incredible. This is a consumer facing business. It's a smaller cybersecurity team, so there's opportunity to just learn a ton. But I mean, it's Nike, right? Watch sports, be around all these athletes, and just that type of fun experience. Kind of like you mentioned, the fact that you can take a skill set that is not inherently in sports and apply that to sports is just, I mean, it's the sports lover's dream, right?
Mhm.
And at this point, I think those opportunities are just opening up so much. All these sports teams, when it comes to technology, they're getting deeper into analytics, into security, into just newer innovation, just all those types of things. Um, I mean, if you have a degree in finance, right, you can go. They have someone has to count the money,
Mhm.
so there's tons of just opportunities there. And I would definitely recommend anyone listening to this to, if you find yourself that you have a passion and it's not necessarily what you think is in sports, there is a path for that somewhere. Even if you go be a doctor, I mean, obviously sports medicine. If you're some sort of chemical engineer, there are people engineering all these different drinks that these athletes have, all this different stuff. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So just explore your opportunities, and it's fun. It's
It's
most
fun.
importantly, it is so fun.
Exactly. I mean, you and I, when we spoke before, for the pre-interview call a little bit, you were telling me like the opportunity to meet all these athletes and go to these games and see the keynote speeches from some of these incredible people. Share with everybody else listening out there, just like some of the opportunities that come with, being able to work at Nike,
Hmm.
no matter the capacity. And again, yours is, making sure they don't lose billions and billions of dollars, which I think is pretty noble in itself. And I'm sure they really, really appreciated you guys on that team as well.
Definitely. Nike overall, they do an amazing job with their programming and bringing athletes in. LeBron James is there quite a bit, and he'll do large events. Mbappe was there while I was there. Um, so many people. Simone Biles was there. Trying to think. There's a lot of athletes just running around
Yeah.
also because Nike they bring them in. So
Mhm.
when Nike say doing, I don't know, signature line, or maybe Serena's getting ready for the U.S. Open or whatever it is, a lot of times they'll come in, and they'll just be there. Zion was there when I was there. Huge sign, of course. And so these athletes are around. A lot of times they'll host events. They like LeBron played kickball with a bunch of people. Like
That's
they
awesome.
like they're there and they're accessible, which is so cool. They brought in Susan Rice also, which was amazing. She was Obama's national security advisor, who is someone who's a sports fan, and obviously she doesn't really work in sports, but she's a sports fan and she's an incredibly accomplished individual at this point. So she came in and she spoke. She spoke about her new book, and we were able to go. It's things like that that are amazing. They have opportunities to go to Blazers games, opportunities to go to Portland Thorns games. Just all kinds of things that kind of anything that you think that Nike does, whether it's just kind of clothing giveaways, that
Mhm.
type of stuff, they do it,
That's
and
awesome, man.
it's
That
great.
makes it so much more enjoyable, right? Again, you're not just working for some tech company, as you said, that's just solely focused on the technology side. You're not working for some pharma company. You get
Hmm.
the added benefit of being able to be around athletes and play kickball. I know it doesn't sound like you did, but potentially
But
play kickball with LeBron James. Like how
yep.
often, what type, the companies you have to work with in that capacity it's a very small number of people, or a
Hmm.
number of companies that will allow you to do something like that. And you worked very hard and you got and deserved the opportunity to work with Nike. But your time at Nike, obviously you enjoyed your job. You had a lot of fun with that. But at some point along the way, you and your good friend Brad, you had to have a conversation. And somehow in this conversation, you came up with this really, really cool idea for a business. You then started to create it. And now you're going through and you actually have recently left your spot at Nike to take this on full time. So tell us a little bit about Prediction Strike and tell us about those initial conversations on like, this actually could kind of work. Like, let's
Hmm.
just try and check this out, see what happens.
Sure. So to begin with, Prediction Strike is a fantasy sports stock market. What does that mean? That means you can buy and sell shares of your favorite players, and the share prices move based on the price, or sorry, based on the performance of those players. So how they actually do in the games. Now, this is one of my favorite stories ever. Actually, just had we come up with it, and just kind of what was the ride like up to this point. So Brad and I have been best friends for like ever. We went to elementary, middle, and high school together, and we didn't go to college together, but we stayed just close in touch. We worked on a few startups in college that honestly never really went anywhere, but we learned a ton and had a good time. So Brad and I, we just talk about sports a lot. We talk about stocks a lot. Those are just things we were interested in. And so it didn't honestly just come to us to be like, okay, let's just combine the two and
Hmm.
it'll be fun. In 2018, I want to say it was May. It was definitely spring. The Supreme Court started opening the door for states to legalize sports betting. So Brad and I started talking about, okay, well, why don't we bet? What we essentially said was that it's too risky. Kind of, if you look at the numbers, you're theoretically going to lose your money. That's how casinos make money. And we said, well, we're not particularly confident in our kind of sports betting, handicapping ability to start spending the money to get good at it, right?
Yep.
So we didn't do that, and so we're just kind of like, what can we do in this space? Maybe this would be fun. I don't know. There's got to be something here. Whatever. Table that conversation. The NBA finals, or at least late into the NBA playoffs, roll around that year, and Brad and I are just talking, and we're talking about the stock market. The stock market's dipping for whatever reason at this time. Brad's like, "Look, I just wish I could put my money in LeBron." And we're like, "Oh, wait,
Wait a
that's
second.
it? Yeah. Wait, what does that? What does that look like?" So that's how we even got here. And so that's how we got to this performance based fantasy sports stock market. Like, what if you could put your money in LeBron? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Uh, what does that what does that feel like for you? If you're kind of a stakeholder in LeBron James's performance, which is different than just being a fan, or maybe at the time I guess you would have been a Cavs fan, now a Lakers fan, or maybe you're just a Bron fan. Like what does that look like? But also what does that look like when you have money in on it?
Mhm.
And that's the goal right now.
I love it, man. I just think it is so cool kind of how again, like the opportunity and the idea. It's so true. Like I kind of wish I could just put my money in LeBron even 17 years into his career, whatever the hell the number is now. I'm still taking him. We all just watched that, missed shot, rebound, put back, defensive play
Yep.
he had in like a 30-second span. Like that was awesome. There's vintage LeBron right there. And again, he's 17, whatever years in. We know he's
Hmm.
playing for a couple more years because he's waiting for his son, which I think is kind of cool. So we'll
Yep.
see what happens there. But I don't know, man. I think it's such a cool concept. So explain a little bit on kind of how it works. Like how
Sure.
exactly do the stocks go up and down? How exactly do people and this is real money. Like I would put $100 into the market. I would buy shares of whomever. And if they do well, right, the money goes up. And if not, they go down. I can take out when I want. I can sell when I want. This is not like, some of these other games that are just for a game. This isn't just for, a specific period of time. This is a legitimate market. So just
Yes.
explain exactly how the dips happen, as you said, so we don't really know how the stock market works. If someone tells you they're probably friggin' lying. So that's another thing. But
Yep.
like, how exactly do the stocks in this stock market work?
Sure. So let's take the LeBron James example. You take your money, you put your $100 in LeBron James. Now you have some shares of LeBron James. LeBron is going to have a fantasy expectation for his next game. For argument's sake, it's 40 fantasy points. Now, if LeBron James scores 41 plus fantasy points, share price will go up. If he scores 39 minus, share price will go down. Pretty simple. Um, and just kind of course, the gravity at which they either overperform or underperform will affect the stock market that way. But in general, that's just how it works. You take the share price, and they're going to have an expectation. Depends on how they do versus that expectation.
And I mean, so you can legitimately have day traders in LeBron James, right? If you don't think he's going to do that well against the Clippers, you could sell some of your shares. When it goes down, you buy it back because you think he's going to do well against the Raptors, right? Like,
Yep.
I think that part is cool. And then you can have the people, I'm a little bit more of a buy and hold kind of guy. Give me some Apple, give me some J&J. I'll ride that out for the next 50
Mm-hmm.
years. Like, I'll just kind of let that continue to go up, 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 and up. So how, in terms of that, like, so do you guys, like, where does the money go? Like, I've, we don't really know how the stock market works. So you guys are
Right.
creating your own stock market. Like, when someone buys shares in LeBron James, like, what do you and Brad then do? Is there a bank account somewhere? Is this some offshore? I'm kidding, of course. But like, how exactly does that aspect of where the hell does this money go?
Yeah. So it's sitting in. We have, of course, we're a corporation, so we have banks, bank accounts. We hold everyone's money in a bank account, and it's like you said, we don't really know where the stock market is, or
Hmm.
there are very few people who kind of know what's going on there. Yeah, we just hold your money in kind of a bank account registered to PredictionStrike, and that's how we move the money around. If you say you sell all your shares, you decide to cash out, you get paid out right from there.
Hmm. T minus three, like the regular stock market, right? No. And so with that, I guess like the cybersecurity shit comes in handy, huh? Because now you have all these people's money in your bank account. I'm sure you have that stuff pretty locked down on your end.
Yes, that was one of the biggest and first concerns. Making sure credit card information, trade integrity, also just making sure
Hmm.
that we didn't have, I don't know, a situation where we lost 100 trades that someone conducted, and now they're like, either where's my money or
Hmm.
I have all this money I shouldn't, just whatever it might be. Uh, Huge concerns. And then, of course, credit card information. Just where is like, did we only take out the amount that you wanted? Did is that bank account, like you said, is that account locked down? All that type of stuff has been just of paramount importance to us.
Yes, and thankfully, again, you have that stuff on lock. Considering if the NBA and Nike were cool with you doing it, I'm sure all the people that are on Prediction Strike right now, and more people. So is this considered a fantasy sport? Is this considered gambling? Where like is this like a weird gray area? Because I don't. It doesn't really sound like either, right? Like I feel like it would
Right.
lean a little more towards gambling, but because you use the fantasy point aspect, like how does this actually like what is this classified as?
Legally, it'd be daily fantasy sports.
Okay.
It's largely just like you mentioned. We're using the fantasy sports aspect. It's based on the player performance. You can create portfolios of a ton of players that just kind of match up with each other, and largely it's also a game of skill. So you have to really be able to say, okay, I think LeBron is going to ball out either tonight or just in general over the next week or kind of whatever it is. And so that's the game of skill part is a big delineation between straight up gambling and daily fantasy sports.
And I would say, I play a little daily fantasy sports, work with a company that does it. How much skill? How much is it? I put in 150 lineups. Right? Like that. That's I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the pieces of it that a lot of people do get angry when it comes to like the DraftKings and the FanDuels of the world is yes, it is a game of skill. Don't get me wrong. You have to know what you're doing. You can't, it's not very easy to just randomly throw some stuff out there.
Right.
But this sounds like it's more, you against the house rather than me going in and taking a bunch of other people's money because I have more tools and opportunities and I'm working with a smarter team, right? So I think that that's really, really impressive too. And the fact that these stocks in athletes go up and they go down based on how well they did is just such a cool way of doing it. Now, I know I spoke with Brad and I want to bring this up again because, again, I'm sure not everybody listened to that episode. And I hope even more people do after they listen to this one. But when a player retires, when rookies come into the market, like how do you set prices on something that again, because it's based on fantasy points, Zion's going to have 0 fantasy points, right? Like you can't really base that on anything. So how do you go and understand like, okay, I want Zion, I want to buy his shares. How do you guys as a market fairly set that price so it's not just, everybody can go in and buy 1,000 shares of Zion,
Yep.
who does incredible, scores what, 25 points in like 10 straight games or whatever, smashes all that. They sell and you guys lose your ass.
Definitely. So we actually tried multiple ways for this. This was a big question mark we had, kind of between ourselves, Brad and I, kind of our close friends, some of which help out on the platform, and just, okay, how do we set this initial price? So there were two kind of leading thoughts. One was that every player would come in at the same price, say $1, and the share price would move kind of based on performance thereafter. The second was that a player would start based upon where their projections were for the total season. So, say a player was projected to score, I don't know, just as many points as LeBron this season as a rookie for whatever reason. I don't know. They would start at say $10, or kind of
Yeah.
thereabouts where LeBron is, right? What happened was we tried both. To be quite honest with you, we tried the $1 for every player for the NBA rookies that started playing kind of this past season,
Mhm.
and that was not very popular because everyone came out. It just didn't feel intuitive. Like,
Mhm.
why is Zion Williamson the same as I don't even know who the last pick in the draft was?
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, so then we got to the NFL rookies who were added, I don't know, some months ago, and we said, okay, look, we're going to start all those based on where they're kind of projected to play this year, and that was by far more popular. It just
Mhm.
started making sense to people. We might continue to tweak that a little bit. I don't know if it is just take like a slight discount on rookies or just kind of whatever it might be. We'll keep playing around with it. But in general, what seemed to make the most sense for people is start everyone off based on where they're projected to be.
And that makes sense, right? Like I would have bought 1,000,000 shares of Zion. I would have let him make all that money, like make me all that money, and then get out. Take my money back, and then I'm just playing my house's money at that point, right? But
Right.
no, man, and I just think it's such a cool concept how you guys came up with it and what you're doing with it. And I guess what are some of the successes that you guys have seen so far? The company's only been around for a short while now. Obviously, over the last couple months, you haven't really been able to do much, as you said. You added the NFL rookies, which is kind of cool. So you got some wide receivers, your little Joe Burrow, like that's kind of
hmm
fun. But I mean, like what have some of the successes been, I guess, before that, before, the pandemic and sports shutdown, and now with sports being back for the last couple days. I mean, I think legitimately like 3 days or 4 days for what you guys, because you do NBA and NFL, right? So
Yes.
what was the beforehand? Like how excited and how much success were you guys having before, this shutdown unfortunately came?
I mean, the beforehand things were great. It was like we are rolling. We had set a bunch of projections for where we want to be by the end of the year. We're on pace to double all of those. The end of the year, which we defined as the end of that NBA season, which would have been
Okay.
June.
Yeah.
So we were on pace to double all those. We were like, this is perfect. User growth. We were growing users like I think we had grown. We're on pace to grow 1,000% from where we were in September of that year, something like that. And we were just fired up. The pandemic hit, and we were kind of like, okay, so now what? And at first, we're like, okay, is this kind of like, I mean, the panic did set in for a second. It's like, is this like the collapse of everything? Is everyone just gonna be like, okay, we don't care, like, go, go pound sand or whatever? I don't know. And it turned out like no, didn't really happen. We started seeing people trade based on NFL trade news. People started gearing up kind of as it became clear that NBA was definitely going to come back. People were trading based on that, and that was very exciting and very good for us to see. It was just like, okay, we remain top of mind for people. People still believe in this. People are excited for it to come back, for sports to come back, and everyone's just kind of waiting. And anyways, we were all waiting together, right? I mean, not even from a business point of view, just as a
Yeah.
sports fan, we're all just like, okay, especially there's literally nothing else to do.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
uh, that was kind of the before and after state. And so we took that middle state and really just hit the ground on a lot of development work. So we're redoing the website. We have an app coming out. We're trying to launch all of that in the fall, but we used the break to really just get all of that designed. figure out a lot of just the technologies and things like that behind it, and start developing it. And really just got us in a good place to launch in the fall, kind of as NFL comes back. So really happy with that, and just the time that we were able to spend doing that, and just getting a better platform out there.
I think it's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, take advantage of the time that we had. I mean, now again, now sports are coming back, and at least, I mean, it's August, which is crazy. So summer's pretty much over, unfortunately. But I wrote a little book during that time, which was pretty cool. So I'm very grateful that
Nice.
I had. I mean, you have the time, right? How often are you stuck inside for 3 months? Like, hopefully not that often, right? So
Right.
if you are there, you might as well take advantage of it. So I tried to do a little something with that. But in terms of, I guess, so as you were saying, like certain things were happening during the shutdown. And if your stock prices, these athletes' stock prices are based on fantasy points, ho- is there any, like, if someone starts selling real hard, that, normally a stock would go down. That's just kind of how the actual market works, the actual stock market works. With fantasy points, though, you can't really take anything into effect like that. So, like, how were the stock prices just kind of stagnant? Did they not move, or did you guys try and incorporate a little bit? Like, obviously, you can't be a heavy dose because then people can literally run the market for you and make all the money that they
Hmm.
want. So, how do you kind of walk that fine line of, all right, well, if it's only 15.50 and it's just they're selling like crazy or buying like crazy and it's still 15.50, like, how do you kind of make sure that that also doesn't happen? Because I think both scenarios, it's unfortunate, obviously, but both scenarios kind of suck a little bit, right?
Right. Uh, the big thing is something I actually should have mentioned earlier. We do have a volume component,
Okay.
and so I guess, I mean, it's really all of this that you're mentioning right now. So you can find this right on our website, but I'll explain the formula. So it takes 30,000 shares purchased to double the price of a player, and 30,000 shares sold to have the price of a player. So what does that mean? That means if everyone's buying, the share price does go up. And so that just kind of a couple of things. One, it's like kind of as you're alluding, right? If everyone's buying, something's going on here, so
Yeah.
the share price should go up a little bit. Also, if you're just a user, you like to see, say you get in early, like, okay, there's some appreciation over here just because I was right first. um,
Right.
uh, or just I was just on it first, like Zion, great example. Zion, I've seen go up like 6% in 12 hours. Uh, People just love that kid.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
As they
and
should.
as oh yeah,
Well, I gotta ask, when he had that picture come out with the mask on, he's looking jacked as shit. Like, did his stock price just go immediately up, looking like
oh
Bane and
people
crazy stuff?
people were definitely buying
Love
shares.
it. That's
I don't
awesome.
have the numbers off the top of my head, but
No.
yes, people were like, okay, he's
Let's
the
go.
future.
Let's
Yeah.
go. Oh, I love it, dude. That is awesome. And I guess, like, with that, like, so where does that 30,000 number come from? Why is it 30,000 shares to double and 30,000 shares to cut a price in half? What, I assume that's a very specific number for a reason. Like, where do you guys get that number from?
Yes, so we started with that number, and it was largely just us plotting out just how volatile do we want the market to be.
Okay.
Say it was 100 shares, right? The market would be up and down all over the place all day, which
Hmm.
is kind of
Yeah.
fun in a chaotic way. It's not in the
Yeah.
not in the way we want. So we said 30,000. Okay, this is kind of a. It is. You will notice some changes,
Hmm.
but it won't just be dominated by these changes. We still would love for it to be uh, fantasy points driven and have the users see that. But we also do want them to get some appreciation just for other people coming in after them and buying. So that's how we chose the 30,000 number. And it's kind of part art, part science. Like we could have made it 40,000. That would have slowed things down a little bit. We could have
Hmm.
made it 20,000, made it a little bit faster. It's getting a feel for it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we'll kind of see what happens. And if things need to get adjusted, then that'll kind of happen down the line.
100%. And so with that, you were saying talking about Zion, and then I got all off track because he was looking like a monster a couple
Oh
weeks ago.
yeah.
So you said you kind of saw that coming. You said you saw about a 6% change in like a span of 12 hours. Like, how many people really jumped on Zion as soon as possible, saying like, "Hey, this is a chunk of my portfolio. This is my ultra growth stock over the next 2 to 3 years because he has that type of potential."
Hmm. Zion. So as you remember, Zion was making a late debut,
Hmm.
and it was kind of well publicized and whatever. And it was a hype train, right? Like Zion's coming back in 7 days, 6 days, whatever. Zion's coming back tonight. So in the 24 hours kind of surrounding the Zion return was our largest one day of user signups.
Let's go.
Um, and it was also I believe we had the most number of deposits. I don't believe it was the most in dollar amount, but I believe it was the
Mhm.
most number. And most of those people, where were they going? Right to Zion. People, uh, it was Zion was like a pull factor for someone to sign up for the
Mhm.
platform.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's too many athletes you really see that about. I mean, especially there was also just what is he actually going to do? Like we haven't even seen it. I think you can do something like that with these other athletes who have become larger than life. Your LeBrons, your Steph Currys. Like if if there was like Tom Brady, these kind of guys that
Mhm.
command a presence, you can use as a pull factor. But Zion was new. It was fun. It was like what is going to happen, and seeing that just pull people onto the platform, it was one of the most exciting things for us.
That is awesome, dude. Yeah, I mean, if you can take advantage and utilize someone like his presence that can then help your business in such a way like that, I mean, that has got to be so cool. And you and Brad must have just been jumping up and down for joy for that
Oh
day. And
yes.
I think that's so awesome. So, again, in terms of this market, how, and I'm pretty confident I asked Brad all these questions, but I don't remember the answers. So I get to do this
No
again,
problem.
which is I'm very excited for. Injuries, right? Like injuries, you should like, is there does a stock drop because a player gets hurt for an entire year? Obviously, again, it's attached to fantasy points, but people can then go ahead and sell that stock. So there's some volume component. But does you know, you know, a 12-month long or an 8-month long ACL tear, understanding that they're coming back probably not as the same player, potentially not as the same player, does that do anything immediately, or do you guys just kind of let the market, if they want to trade it, they trade it? If not, they just hold and sit and wait.
Right. What you would see immediately would be if that player got injured in game. So if they
Hmm.
got injured in game, they're probably going to miss their expectations for that game, and then their share price would most likely drop after that.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you'll probably see a bunch of people selling, um, which will most likely drop the price. Then you might even see some people come back the other way and say, well, depending on the length of the
Hmm.
injury,
Hmm.
come back the other way and say, okay, I think they're going to be underprojected for their return. Let me buy a bunch of shares, and that might send the price up a little bit. Good example of that, not an injury, but Antonio Brown. Series of off-field incidents,
Oh,
to put it
great way
mildly.
to say it. Great way to say it, man.
That he was kind of in and out of the league. I mean, he's still even in and out of the league.
Hmm.
He's retired, but he was just suspended. I don't
Yeah,
know
whatever. Guy's
exactly.
a nut job.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. So, but in the kind of that was this past year, kind of in the course of that up and down roller coaster with is he playing, is he not? There was a lot of buying kind of on the way because I mean he is an elite talent.
Hmm.
Selling as he's leaving Oakland, buying again. He's going to the Pats. Selling. He's leaving. Then buying again because people thought he was going to Seattle at the time, or
Hmm.
I believe it was Seattle. Buying again, made it clear that wasn't going to happen. Selling again. So see a lot of that up and down type action, and there's kind of the same thing with injuries. That was just one of the biggest clear cut examples because there were like three
Hmm.
actions of
Yep.
rising and falling in like 6 weeks. But injuries is much the same. So
Yeah.
someone like we really don't know how some of these guys are going to come back. Like we know KD is still going to be automatic as a shooter. What's his dribbling going to be like?
Hmm.
Clay too. Even though Clay will score 60 points on 10 dribbles, like what like how does that actually affect what people are thinking about? It's hard to tell, but it's definitely fun to watch.
Oh my goodness. I can only imagine just kind of, you guys being able to see public perception in real reality, right? Like public perception is one thing. Public perception with money on the line is a lot different, I believe. And seeing how
Hmm.
people really feel about something when their dollar amount is they have a dollar amount attached to it. So just two more quick things before I let you go, Devin. This has absolutely been fantastic. Deven Hurt of PredictionStrike, co-founder and CEO. With COVID, obviously, we are starting to see a lot of, obviously you had that layoff for the NBA. Now, as I said, the NFL is coming back in about 6 Sundays, which is pretty fantastic as of recording. Some of these players are now starting to drop out or opt out, not drop out. That's a stupid way to say it. They have health concerns. They're worried for their family. Totally understand
Hmm.
that. Obviously you got to do what you got to do, man. We don't really know what the hell's going on anyway. So if you're unsure, just get out when you can. So with that, someone like Damian Williams, he opts out, wins his Super Bowl. Shout out to, as everyone knows, playoff Damian, as Joe Buck said. And,
Yep.
we have him opt out, and you have the rookie, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, in there. So as you said, you already put some prices on the market for the rookies that were coming in. I'm sure his was very high because he's a part of this potent offense, but he also had another running back he was going to share the field with. Do you then go and adjust his price based on his projections now? Or because it was set, it's just, hey, this is what it was, and now we have new information. And if you bought early, you look real good because this dude's probably going to be, we thought he was going to be a stud, but now it's his backfield. Now it's going to be his fun with Patrick
Mhm.
Mahomes, and he's going to do it all. Like, how did you then see the market react to that type of news? And did you guys try and go into, like, I guess, adjust for that at all?
It's really the latter component of what you were saying. We didn't adjust the price. We didn't want to be kind of this heavy-handed
Hmm.
market-making
Okay.
force. So it really is. Look, if you bought in kind of draft day, and now it's like you said, it's his backfield. He's the number one guy up. Good for you. You're killing it. Um, so we're definitely seeing a lot of trades just around the players opting out, and players who what I'm really interested in, kind of along these lines, is how the market will react to players who get coronavirus, either
Mm,
preseason, during the season,
yeah.
whatever it is, and they're supposed to be coming back. Um, the spectrum of how healthy people are as they're coming back is kind of all over the place. I remember, I want to say it was weeks ago, Rudy Gobert said he's still not 100%. He still doesn't have
Hmm.
all his senses back. I saw that Red Sox pitcher
Yep.
just he couldn't get medically cleared. Um, and just kind of in reality, baseball is the least physical of the major sports we're talking about
Yep.
coming back, and he wasn't able to get cleared. So what does that look like when you start getting into football, basketball? I don't know. So that'll be really interesting to see, and it's just something to watch. And especially as you mentioned, we just don't have a lot of clarity around what the disease can do. We might even see a situation where, okay, look, the players who opt out, people start buying them for next year
Hmm.
because they theoretically are coming in completely healthy, and also just taking a year off on your body, you're very healthy. So
Yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting. Obviously, again, I'm not a virologist. I don't really know how the hell any of this stuff works. Hopefully, everyone out there is safe and healthy. And if you do catch it, it's one of the more mild cases, of course, especially in the world of sports. And the last question I have is with players retiring. How exactly does that work? When a player retires, does that stock, whatever it's at, you just get that cash thrown to your bank account and it's done? And that's the end of the game for that stock, and then you can kinda just go ride some other stuff? Like, is it that simple, I guess?
essentially, we've been leaving the stocks up there when players retire, just because if you just want the cool factor of being
Mhm.
invested in certain players, we'll just leave it up there for you. But in general, look, you can just kind of sell the player and go on about your business. Especially at this point, retirings are so public
Yeah.
that you kind of know what's coming. So look, if you're able to make an informed decision no matter what. So like I said, if you just want to have the cool factor of having, I don't know, Vince Carter because he was your hero in your portfolio, do it. Like we're not gonna stop you from that. I mean, part of this was all born out of
Mhm.
like Brad said he wants to put his money in LeBron. So why should there really be an end date on when you can have your money in LeBron? Like how
Absolutely,
cool
man.
would it be to say you were there in 2018 when this was founded and like, yeah, I have my money in LeBron for the last 10 years and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, right? I'm still happy with it. He's been retired for 3, but I'm still a
Yeah.
very good investment, and, no, man, as you said, Antonio Brown's retired, like, 6 times in the last, like, 5 weeks, it feels like, so you really can't take him off the market yet because you actually don't know what the hell is gonna
Seriously.
happen there, so I think that part's pretty important too. But, Devin, this has been absolutely incredible. Devin Hurt, co-founder and CEO of PredictionStrike, formerly working with the NBA and Nike, and, oh, by the way, graduated from Harvard. And I do wanna just say one last thing. It was really a really great way of you saying, Brad and I went to grade school, middle school, high school, but we ended up not going to college together because you went to Harvard. Shout out to Brad on that. No, I'm kidding, of course. Brad's a smart dude too, obviously. But
Most
Devin,
definitely.
really appreciate your time today, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, everyone. It's been great.